Welcome, everyone, to the Community Church of Mill Valley, where we're celebrating our 100th anniversary this year. This is our first big event to celebrate that anniversary, and we're going to be going back in time 100 years. Of course, we don't know exactly what was said, but we have a few records that make some suggestions, and that's what we're going to hear today. So welcome. I think you all know me, but I'm Carol Manahan, and I'm the minister here at the church.
1924 was a very special year in Mill Valley. The summer was unusual. Very few people knew that something was going on because it all happened in private homes and meeting rooms in churches, etc. It never made it into general knowledge and newspaper. But at the end of the summer, all pieces needed to make a community church had come together, and something really happened then. But before then, more stuff happened. But this was first. Welcome to the summer of 1994, where we will tell you what happened. What was it like in Mill Valley? Still a beautiful little mountain town, and had less than 3,000 residents. But it was changing dramatically from the early years when it was basically a summer vacation home for people from San Francisco. By then, after the earthquake, it had basically become a place where people could live comfortably all year. And things were improving. There was a thriving downtown around the train depot. Even had electric streetlights, big deal. The roads, which had been horrible, were finally getting paved. And actually, from 1920, you could actually mail and receive letters in town. Basically, it was becoming a civilized place. One of the big things that happened was that there was an influx of new people that were not born and bred in this area. They came from the outside, and they were called the newcomers. Men were returning home from war, and with their families, they were looking for a place to settle down, get a house, raise a family, get some sanity to their lives. So they bought lots, and houses were built here. The real estate market was just booming. And for many, it really felt like, some say, it was a hopeful time of new beginnings. However, not everybody thought this was going in the right direction. I give the word to Thomas Nelson, later of the community church.
There was a large number of residents in our community who, for one reason or another, had not affiliated with any existing local church.
Thank you, Tom. That would have been common for the time, but well, it'll be common for now, but not at that time, because it was still a church-going time, where you basically proved that you were a respectable member of the community by being a member of a church. And it was also a way that you yourself gained some sense of belonging. However, many of these newcomers did not do that. We wonder why. Now, Tom Nelson is sort of vague about it for one reason or another, but we do have one voice from that time. That's Helen Chestnut. She's the wife of the contractor that eventually built this church, and this is what she had to say.
My husband and I were brought up in strict Presbyterian homes, mine in Illinois, and we were really tired of going to church. When we Illinois siblings first came to California, we did not go to church at all. When my husband and I moved to Mill Valley in 1919, there were no churches except the Catholic and the Congregational, and a Methodist church way out of town. The Catholic Church was, of course, going great, but the Congregational Church was in its last gasp.
Well, Helen skipped the Episcopal Church, She also skipped the Christian Science church. Clearly, those were not her cup of tea. Apparently, from what she said, she objected to the rigidity of a standard church. They told her what to do and what to think, and she wasn't having it. Many other residents shared her feelings, and many of them, like her, had come from a place where she grew up and basically had left the background behind. So often when that happens, and you don't have enforcement to do things that were considered normal in that place, they may just fight away. You get busy, you get a house, you got kids. Churches, some people, it's a decision, and Helen Chestnut definitely made a decision, like many other people apparently, and among the newcomers. They, like her, they disliked the many little churches around that all claimed they were the right way to be a Christian. It didn't make any sense to them. They were against all the various denominations. So sometimes it's a decision, sometimes it happens over time. Now what about the people that did go to church? Well, actually, none of the little Protestant churches in Mill Valley were doing particularly great. You would think with an influx of new people that there would be more members, but there really wasn't. And some previous members actually left. It was sort of strange, they thought. And the Congregational Church, it got so bad that towards the end, they could not afford to pay for an ordained minister. They had to make do with a theology student, who was quite good, but still, it showed that something was definitely wrong, and it definitely set them thinking. Carol Donnan Fowler was a young woman, teenager in the church at that time. We don't have her thoughts from the very time, but later she reminisced about those years.
A group began to form among the members who envisioned a different kind of church, one that belonged to no denomination, had no rigid structure, that welcomed all who believed in God and in Jesus Christ. In the post-war period, there was an optimism and courage and a readiness for innovation and social change.
Innovation and social change. Where did they get the inspiration from? It was primarily from newspapers, particularly newspapers that talked about the community church. They have been known since the 1880s, but around 1915 they became the big new thing. They liked the idea of a church that was created by the community, for the community, and welcoming everyone. Very different from what happened in all the different denominations, and run without an outside authority like a pope or a bishop. The idea just seemed fresh and modern to them. They woke up and listened. The closest place for community church was Piedmont, which was in the East Bay. And in 1919, the pastor, Dr. Milliken, came to speak to the Congregational Church. Now, he was really supposed to talk about his time in Hawaii, where he had been a minister. However, what people wanted to hear about, also in the newspapers, was, what about the community church? He laid a frame there. Even closer than Piedmont was Fairfax, where just during those years, they were making a community church. In 1922, the Mill Valley Record, the local weekly, had 8 articles that basically followed the whole creation of the community church in Fairfax. Basically, our people here were given a blueprint for how to do a church. Not everybody can think of, how do I make a new church? But they could just look around and see how other people had done it. Let's go back to Thomas Nelson. He has a few things to say.
The idea of organizing a community church in Mill Valley had existed for some 4 or 5 years. From various quarters, not connected with each other, the desire had been expressed from time to time that such an organization might come into being. This idea seemed to be partly a contagion that has come from other communities where successful community churches were already in existence. The plan has grown very gradually in Mill Valley, and it's finally converged into action.
Converged into action. What would that look like? We have several founding stories, which make sense because, according to Nelson, the desire for something new happened in various different places, and each of those places created their own founding story, who started it and how it went on. So first I give you the women's founding story as told by Helen Chestnut, the one you also initially heard about her dissatisfaction with the traditional churches. So let's hear from Helen Chestnut.
People wanted to go to church somewhere, so a group of them got together and formed a community church. The principal of the high school at the time was Mr. Ernest Woods. His wife, Mrs. Wood, and a woman named Mrs. Donnan and some other friends got together and started the church.
Now, the official story I've heard about the early years is that the community church movement was basically a men's movement, and the women were there to give sanction and assistance. Clearly not the whole story. Boo. The two women knew each other from the Congregational Church. The following skit is fictional history. We really don't know, but in context of what was going on at the time, the essence is right. The place is the social hall of the Congregational Church, and the time is late spring of 1924. Here comes Susan Donnan. And she walks to the table and settles down a bit with some papers to look. Here comes Mrs. Woods.
Oh, Mrs. Donnan, so happy to see you always. I've been wanting to talk with you about something. Is this a good time?
Yes, it is.
Well, I've been reading more about community churches, and we've been talking about them at the Congregational Church. For years, it seems. Ever since Dr. Milliken came and gave that talk in 1919, it seems that we now have a big group of members who are interested, big enough that we could actually do something. I think the time has come to actually establish one in Mill Valley. What do you think?
I agree with you. It's certainly time. We should move past just talking about this. I'm thinking about what the first step should be. Wait, I see someone else coming.
We should do something finally. Don't you think so?
We went to church.
We could just establish something as soon as we can.
Soon. I have an idea about how we can do this. The three of us are trustees of the church. Let's make a proposal to the other board members. A proposal to start an organized community church, or at least have a committee to figure out the next step. I think it will pass.
Okay. So. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So what you just saw here and what you saw these women do was the first step to action in the desire to get a community church. Founding story number 2 also takes place in a congregational church, though in a meeting room, and by then is June 12th, 1924. Members like Susan Donnan and Mabel Woods had brought their concern to the very top of the trustees. They propose the organization of a community church. What will the board do? Susan Donnan, a trustee, leads the decision.
Mr. Matthews moved that a committee be appointed to take up the matter of attempting the organization of a bona fide community church and report back no later than July 10th as to its plan. The motion was seconded, the committee approved it, and the motion was passed, and Mr. Conley and Mr. Matthews were appointed to form the committee.
Well, they had a deadline, but we don't have what they actually, that happens with papers. It's a miracle we even have the thing that showed what they did on June 12th. But this is really big. They have gone from just talking around, they have gone to make a proposal to the board, and the board has sanctioned it. They're really going to do this. Now, the Congregationalists, they're not enough. They cannot do this. They cannot make a community church by themselves. They're not enough. There wouldn't be a community church. So I think what they decided on was to do some outreach, find some more people that also likes the idea. So the next step is trying to find members from outside the church. Remember the two names on the committee, Connolly and Matthews. Keep them in mind. The names will come up again in the next founding story. We have a founding story number 3. It's the best known one, and it took place about 2 months later, probably mid-August. It happened in Thomas and Helen Nelson's house in Mill Valley, and was a conversation between 4 friends. But before we go there, we have a short interlude to change the stage. Odan will play Rhapsody in Blue, which was the big hit of 1924. In the meantime, we clear Mr. Table. We're getting together after a dinner party to do a little card game, supposedly a rubber bridge, which no one can actually play here. But while they're sitting here, let's figure out who are these men. They have something in common. They're all newcomers. They were not born and raised here. They're all living in Marin. Those 3 of them work in San Francisco. And I'll introduce them individually. Thomas Nelson, you raise your hand? Yeah. He's an attorney, and he's not affiliated with any churches. David Walker. Hi, David. He's an insurance agent. Like Nelson, he's not affiliated with any churches. Matthews. Yep. He's a teacher who has been the chief superintendent for all the schools in Marin at that time. He was leading the building of the old mill school just before this event. Unlike the others, he's actually a member of the community church. Remember Matthews? He was there. Reagan Connolly. Reagan? Okay, there. He's the mercantile manager of the Hughes Emporium over in San Francisco. He's the big businessman. Like Matthews, he's a member of the Congregational Church. So this is interesting. 2 of these people are from the unaffiliated group, and 2 are from the Congregational group. And 2 months earlier, these 2 men, they were picked to create a plan for a community church. Interesting. I think I see how this is being done. Outreach. They're doing outreach to their friends in the non-affiliate group, bringing up the subject at dinner parties. They know that to create a community church in Mill Valley, these 2 groups need to get together. I think they're wrapping it up. This, by the way, is a skit that was performed in 1952 to celebrate the founders, the ones that were still alive, and actually all members in the skit were still alive in 1952. Let's go.
I think we ought to talk about this church business.
That's a really good idea. Tell us more about it.
Well, not much has happened yet, but some of us have been talking about getting together and starting a new church.
What kind of church, Tom? What denomination?
That's just the point, Dave. No denomination at all. I was talking to Tom about it yesterday, and I think it's a great idea. We could have a church that didn't just tell us exactly what to believe.
As long as we believe in God and the principles that Christ taught.
I think that's great because I remember the church that I used to go to, and I just couldn't agree with the pastor about things like, oh, I don't know, Moses walking through the Red Sea.
But I thought in order to be a Christian, you had to be a Presbyterian or an Episcopalian or something.
Well, this is the way I look at it. There are lots of folks here in Mill Valley who'd like to belong to a church, but they have their own ideas about God and about the Bible. They don't want to subscribe to a whole set of fixed interpretations about religion. Maybe they want to be free to change their minds once in a while.
I really like that. What's our next move?
Well, we've talked about starting a building fund. Someday we'll have a real intensive money-raising campaign. But to start with, I think we could arrange to use the outdoor art club.
I like that. So from there, where do we go?
Seems to me we should get some more people together, sort of a committee to draw up a constitution.
Fine. I'll call Jerry Holmes and Wally Andrews. I know they're interested.
Yeah, and the Armstrongs and the Dammons and the Dillons too.
I'll talk to Art Smith. What night shall we set for our next meeting?
Why don't we plan on coming over here to my house a week from tonight?
Okay.
Agreed. Okay. Well, Tom, thanks for your hospitality.
A pleasure.
It's been a fine evening. See you next week.
Well, it looks like they are on the move. On the list of the people they mentioned to be contacted, only the Dunnans are from the Congregational Church. All the rest are from the affiliated group. There's basically the group that was needed to create a community church. So the outreach is working. So we have now followed these people from the beginning, from what I call the great dissatisfaction, where they simply didn't want to go to anything that was here. It was all wrong. Through the inspiration from the community churches nearby, we got the first step of action for Maplewood and Susan Donnan in the church. And then the big decision from the Congregational Church that it would indeed organize a community church. Then the outreach to the unaffiliated group, and then the coalition between those two groups. It was not something they could do on their own. So the magic of the summer of 1924 is that the people who had separately discussed the community church and desired such a church, they found each other and went to work together to make it happen. By September, a group of around 30 families were working together. The answer to the question, whoever got the idea to create a community church, is in itself classic community church. No single individual did it. It was a community effort from the very start. They arranged a public meeting for October 9th at the Old Mill School. It was announced in the Mill Valley Record on September 27th. And you see this beautiful poster? It was the ad in the newspaper at the time. They say they're going to have an open meeting to discuss the community church, and they're going to have it at the old school auditorium in the evening. They actually meant to say 8 o'clock. They told that later. And Dr. Milliken, the pastor from the Piedmont Church, is going to come over and do the main speech, and there will be special music. You are invited to attend. Now, when people saw this, there was a fair amount of excitement. But anytime there's something new coming, there's also questions and there's also some worries. What will this mean? So to sort this out, a fictional journalist contacts Hamilton Nelson to get some answers.
Thank you for taking time to meet with me, Mr. Nelson.
Pleasure.
I look forward to hearing more about your ideas and your plans for the community. My first question is, why do you and your friends want a community? My first question to you, Mr. Nelson, is why do you and your friends want a community church in Mill Valley?
We want a church where there's no prescribed creed. We think the relationship between you and God is really up to you to decide. If we set the creeds aside, we can agree on a common purpose.
So a church without a creed?
No creed in a community church.
That sounds like a very novel idea.
If we respect our differences and stop bickering about who's right and who's wrong about creeds, then we can actually get something useful done in the community.
Something such as?
We want to create more than just a church where you can go for modern religious services. We want it to be a community center for everyone. We want to have activities there for kids, teenagers, adults. Mill Valley's growing, and we want to have our little city grow in the best way possible. We want to shape the future character of Mill Valley by creating what you might call a community spirit of the highest order. This is what community churches have done in other places, and we can do it too.
Some people have asked, but why a church? What you seem to be saying is that an organized, structured church with active members practicing Christian ethics would be a really great good for the community.
We believe it would.
So let me go back a moment. What exactly do you mean by a modern church?
It's a church that looks ahead, not back. There are church traditions that developed over the centuries that have no actual grounding in the Christian faith. For example, why should we meet on Sunday mornings as opposed to Sunday evenings? It's not essential to the faith. We can decide for ourselves. Also, so much is being discovered in today's science, we need to integrate that knowledge into the church. We can't just deny or ignore new evidence because we didn't know of it before. Putting blinders on is not essential to our core belief.
That does sound very modern, indeed. Moving on, Mr. Nelson, can you fill me in on where you are with the planning for this church?
For about 6 weeks, we've been meeting to discuss the pluses and minuses of a community church, to try to all be on the same page, so to speak. We've started working on a constitution for community church, but we've also decided to call a public meeting on October 9th in the auditorium at the Old Mill School. It's time for the whole community to get involved.
Yeah, I saw the notice in the Mill Valley Record. Who exactly are you hoping will attend the meeting, Mr. Nelson?
Well, of course, we're hoping to meet people who, like us, are already interested in a community church. But the ad says you are invited to attend, and that really means everyone. We're planning for an informal meeting, and there will be time for everyone to join in a discussion.
So, backtracking, if you're already committed to a church or a member of another church, are you still welcome at the meeting?
Absolutely. Think of the event as more of an informal civic event. It's not a church service. And let me be clear, too. We don't want to destroy anything, certainly not anyone's existing relationship with their church, and we're certainly not trying to lure or steal members from other churches. We're mostly trying to reach people who at the moment are not associated with other churches. At the heart, we all share a belief in God and the ethics of Christianity. You could become a member of the community church and still keep your membership in another church if you wanted.
Very interesting. I think I might plan to be at the meeting. I hear Dr. Milliken from Piedmont Church is going to be speaking. I think he was here maybe 5 years ago, and I heard him speak then. And I hear you're also going to have some good music. The Emporium Sextet from San Francisco is going to be playing.
Yes, it ought to be more than an interesting meeting. We want folks to enjoy some good live music, too. I hope to see you there. Bring your friends.
Thank you very much. I look forward to hearing more about your project.
And so it came to be that the community church movement in Mill Valley went public. Ta-da, the poster. The meeting was a big success, and a founding committee of 30 people, 18 men and 12 women, was created. And their task was, over the next 4 months, they were going to rearrange more public meetings. They're going to find a place to meet. Can they meet at the outdoor art club? How do we find a minister? If you want to do a new kind of service, how do you do it? So the next months was a lot of outreach and trying to sort out how they're actually going to look in real life. The excitement in town grew fast by this. Helen Chestnut actually once said, well, there wasn't that much going on. It's not like today, where there's competition from everywhere for your attention. This was new and possibly the most exciting thing to happen in Mill Valley in 1924, perhaps since the advent of the silent movie theater. A community spirit of the highest order, as Nelson said, was quickly created, and things were downright cooking in the fall of 1924. But alas, episode 1 of the Founding of the Community Church series was end on a cliffhanger. But at least you know that they succeeded. Usually the cliffhanger is, will they or will they not? At least you know that here you are, they did succeed. Hanging in there for episode 2, which I expect will arrive sometime early next year. Stepping back and keeping in mind the remarkable founders, let's end with this unattributed quote from the church archives. The founders were wonderful people, exciting, with a rebellious streak, as later ministers noted with a mix of admiration and exasperation. They were the free thinkers of the 20th century. Indeed, they were. Thank you to everyone who made the first episode possible. Particularly thank you to the staff at the Mill Valley Lucretia's Little History Room, who allowed us to use Helen Chestnut's special voice. And then I would like to see everybody up here. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for everybody who put on the best regimented clothing. And let's have a group picture here. Hey. Group picture.
Thank you.
And then, of course, thank you to all of you for coming.
Yes. Get our picture taken.
That'll be a good picture.
Do we look unhappy?